Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for coming to our last reading of our 39th anniversary season of River Styx. My job is so easy tonight. All I have to do is say, "Behold, Mary Ruth, the president of the St. Louis Poetry Center, and a splendid poet herself, and she's going to do everything else." So, enjoy.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank Richard and Kim for having us in the reading tonight, for inviting us to read, and I want to thank Raven Wolf, that I think is still in the house, for playing us in. The St. Louis Poetry Center has close to 70 years of tradition and the energy of an adolescent, along with some of its angst. We continue our monthly Sunday afternoon workshops, 3 yearly poetry contests. We have 3 monthly reading series, each with its own constituents and purpose. A vigorous outreach program, nationally recognized, serving at-risk children, women who have suffered abusive relationships, prisoners, and others. We also promote poetry through creative collaborations and much more. As you can imagine, it takes very special people to undertake these projects and still protect their creative solitude. Tonight we are featuring 4 such people. They are poets who have given generously of their time and remain darn good poets amidst all this hubbub. Their bios are on the programs that are on the table. It's a 2-sided sheet. Raven Wolf is on the back of the 2-sided sheet. We'll be hearing from him later, I believe. Our first poet is Jen Fandell. She has served on the board for several years now. She's completely written one of our appeal letters and assisted in others. Been on the observable team for 3 years, and she's done much more. She just received a National Park Service residency for this summer at Homestead National Monument. So please welcome Jen Fandell.
Hello, everyone. I want to give a big thanks to both the St. Louis Poetry Center and River Styx. When I moved here, now going on 4 years ago, these were sort of my 2 families. So the people in both organizations are very special to me and have absolutely helped not only support my writing, but make my writing better. And I very much appreciate that. I'm going to start with a poem that I have never, sorry, I'm really doing the P's here. With a poem that I have never had the guts to read before to a crowd. But this is my birthday week, and this is a birthday poem, so I figured that I should just do it. And this poem is set in Louisiana, which is a place where I lived for a while in the past. And I think that's about all that you need to know. And it is titled, "You Can Leave Your Hat On." The night I turned 25, crazy with liquor and spring song at La Boucherie, my favorite dive, a woman with her Harley parked outside hoisted herself atop the bar, unbuttoned her shirt, and opened it wide. Her boyfriend smiled up at her drooping breasts, and I downed the shot put in front of me, whistling and hollering with the rest. After that, a man shook off his pants. We tipped back another drink and laughed to watch his fly gape as he danced. Then, raising herself back on the bar, the biker closed her eyes and shimmied, tits peeking out from her long gray hair as her boyfriend raised his glass to her until Tom Jones faded on the jukebox. I usually think of myself as demure, but when the Welsh crooner started back up, I thought, what the hell? You turned 25 in a Louisiana bar only once and gave the crowd my B-cups while I twirled my shirt above my head. Down on the floor, the biker and I hugged, and I gushed, this was wilder than I had planned. Remember, she said, you are beautiful for not giving a good goddamn. Oh, I can't decide. I'm gonna read one more Louisiana poem, who's some of you may have heard, but I don't think many of you have heard. And this it is titled "A Woman's Name," Monette. Monette had muscular legs played up in pumps that matched her flowered dresses belted at the waist, spotlighting her breathing bosom. Every time she answered the phone and smiled with helpful information, I watched her lips full of Louisiana flowers in winter. Her voice was soft as fog in the marsh. Young and without direction, I worked in the office with Monette, and we took registrations for leisure learning courses, Zydeco dancing, concealed handgun, and coupon queen's tips and tricks. In my worn jeans and ragged tees, I marveled at Southern belles and their conspicuous beauty that raged on until, for some, it was house-coated and terribly gone. When our aging boss said, "Charlie hates to see me without my makeup," I lowered my eyes as if someone were dead. Monette quietly said she could understand. One day during our lunch break, Monette pulled 2 persimmons from her bag and handed one to me, leaning in with a smile. "They're from our orchard," she said. "Last night we stole away from the kids to pick persimmons and skinny dip in the bayou." Her eyes flickered and a blush overruled perfect rouge as she rolled a persimmon in her hand, laughing at where the fruit had taken them. I cut into the tenderness carefully and sucked on a strange new envy in each wedge of honeyed custard, feeling the sweet humidity on her neck and the strands of hair slipping down under the gaze of her husband. Okay, now I'm completely changing gears from the humid Louisiana to Wisconsin, which is where I'm from. And this poem is a sonnet. It is an ode to one of those farm stores where you can get everything you could possibly want. So this poem is titled Ode to Farm and Fleet. For I love your rich scent of tractor tires mixed with the dark dyed canvas stink of stiff-legged Lee and Wrangler jeans and the metallic tinge of fertilizer. Perusing your roomy, well-swept aisles, brimming with everything a girl could need. Wrench sets, cast iron pots, animal feed, chain link. I can believe I'm so much more than a buyer of windshield wipers, work boots, a turkey fryer, burnt peanut candy, and June's field and stream. I drive home through a countryside gone in one blink, a land divided and strung by wires. And I think on how there's no way to get back to the fields of wheat and the drowse of chaff. And this one, I think, needs no introduction. It is titled Breakfast After Your Death. A month after you shot yourself in the head, you came back, quiet and bright-eyed, ready for a laugh. I'm so hungry, you said. 6 foot and broad-shouldered, you hiked the morning through the knee-high snow, punching through the icy crust to watch the waterfall freeze itself into scalloped wings. When you walked back into my life as if you were there all along, leaning on my porch railing in early spring light, I understood how appetite might conjure a buried man. I went to the cupboard, poured golden flakes into a bowl, and splashed in milk until the corn rose to its edge. I watched you eat, quiet friend, no shyness left in your hunger, the spoon clattering bold as a bell. If only I could multiply those grains under the mild Minnesota sun, make you stay long past the milk, warming and sweetening, and you tipping the bowl up, catching the last drops. And my final poem is I've been exploring, which is nice that I am going to go to this Homestead National Monument this summer. I've been exploring a lot about home. And I was thinking about, for me, the idea of pining. I was a kid who was notoriously homesick all the time. And I, still sort of find myself homesick from time to time. And for me, the idea of pining, longing for a place, it was sort of a double sort of meaning, because where I come from, it's mostly pines. So that's something that I often miss, is just that landscape of like white and a lot of green. And there are just a few names that you don't need to know, but it might help. There are 2 rivers that I mention that are in northern Wisconsin, the Brule and Namakagon. And then also, I thought that this was part of like regular, not mythology, that's not the right word, but Gitche Gumee, for people who haven't heard that before, that's the Native American word for Lake Superior. Pining. I miss the reds, jacks, and tamaracks, hunkered on the high banks of Superior's shale cliffs, where winter knuckles the pines with ice, and they shadow in the late summer sun. This feeling is hard to live with long. In the deep green before they reached the shore, the lumbermen cut the pines away, sent logs afloat down the Brule and Namakagon, leaving too much sky. When they came to the fabled Gitchigumi, they put down their saws and axes to listen for the wind's thin scream through the needles, to touch the lichen on the shade side bark. Oh, virgin logs, oh, high timber skiff, hauled by horses through the necessary snow. In decades of spring melt, in tremulous winds, more swinging boughs went down, and I am lost to what happened and with what remains. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jen. You certainly got us off to a roaring start in the beginning there. Our next reader is Dwight Bittikoffer. He runs a year-round series, Second Friday Notes, at Whole Foods in Town and Country. It's our series for the West County and for the Agora. He also helped us get and stores our sound system, which means that he lugs it to very, very many events. I think more than he was counting on. He has been serving on the board for several years now and serves on the executive committee and does much, much more. And I believe Raven Wolf will be accompanying. And when Dwight first said Raven was coming, I thought, oh boy, maybe he'll do some backs for some of my poems. And then I thought, damn, I'm not reading tonight. So Dwight and Raven.
Raven Wolf and I do quite a bit together. We met at we started doing some stuff together at an open mic that used to be down at BB's Jazz Blues and Soups, and that kind of got us started. And we do several shows a year over at Stone Spiral and a couple other things together. I'm going to be reading mostly older things tonight, and Jen ended with heritage poems about where she was from, and I'm starting there. And I've lived in St. Louis for, 40 years now. But but where I come from, 400 miles west of here, really shapes who I am too. This is called "I Am From." I am from sky blue over flat land, square miles laid in grid township roads. I am from the small white church, separate from the world by the cemetery. I am from grandma's kitchen, the knife, butchering chickens, the yeasty lump of bread dough. I am from the red barn, classic lines built by my grandfather, mud nests of barn swallows. I am from responsibilities begun at age 6, watering chickens, filling feed boxes, picking up fallen apples. I am from the open seats of old John Deeres, plowing stubble, mowing hay, cultivating maize. I am from the cherry trees ripe with fruit in the high branches in June, sour then sweet. I am from wheat sowed in autumn, dull green in winter, oceans of harvest golden in summer. I am from structure shaped by fundamentalism, rigidity tempered by love and home-baked pies. I am from the land, wind-blown, restless, gone now to a place not where I am from. And I was debating about these two poems as opening poems and just decided, since Jen did 5, I slipped this other one back in too. This has to do with also from an ancestry, but going farther back into where my ancestors came from in Switzerland. This poem was published a couple years ago in Natural Bridge, Burn under our Switzerland. So thin the thread that they were here, so faint the connecting line from before they left this place in 1833. Now others carry their name or something close. In these green valleys, bells jangle on necks of cows, window boxes spill pansies, sprout red geraniums. The river flows below the covered bridge. The clerk of records speaks their tongue and pages through books that don't quite match the names and dates that we are seeking. 1 T or 2? How about that G? The case of the missing dates and towns of birth, so many left then, and so many inaccuracies of spelling followed. And so we are left with this sense of place, a lineage of language and rolling hills, the high hawk sail of Der Roter Milan. Its eye scans for a mouse in a field of hay. Let's go with the tenor. Raven Wolf is so great about being intuitive about these things, but I frequently will choose an instrument that, sometimes it always works. Yeah. Usually, anyway. We've got a show at Stone Spiral on June 14, together with Shine Goody and Zaire Amini are going to be with us. This poem, this was from a trip to Germany about 6 years ago, and visited the Dachau concentration camp. And some of the images in this poem come from visiting. There was a Protestant, a Catholic, and a Jewish type chapel at the end of the tour, and some of these images come from there. And there was an exhibit about a poet who had had survived the Dachau concentration camp, and this is called Dachau Poet. Mother, was I born only for this? He queried from the bottom of Jacob's well, helpless against the tyranny that starved, brutality that gashed soul wounds, left blood dripping. From the lion's den comes growling, snapping of jaws ready to consume last breaths. From the searing sizzle of the furnace roaring at the bottom of the pit, 3 men survived to tell the story. No matter how small the light, no matter how far away the opening, hope is the last to die. Hope lives against all sense of reason. Hope binds the last sinew against bone, to move the arm, to raise the chest, to gasp, the breath that draws the air to live, just 5 minutes longer. From the bottom of the well, I see the tremble of the hidden pencil's scrawl, the incision of words that plant a seed that will someday blossom into words for letting go, for healing. From the flame of a tiny candle, I breathe a hurried prayer of hope. Yes, Mother, I was born for this. This is a poem I wrote for Karen Duffy and read at the last poetry reading at Duff's last summer. Karen had told me a story about before she and her first husband started Duff's restaurant. They had spent a year traveling in Europe and Northern Africa, and they had spent some time in Morocco, and decades later, her daughter married a man from Morocco, and Karen was finding a kind of connection with that. And the story was they met on the flying back to St. Louis to visit her family. They met a man who suggested that they open Duff's on Euclid. And so this is Morocco for Karen Duffy. And the wind cried, Morocco, Morocco, Morocco. While the boy and girl played in the sand, a twinkling eye crossed continents, and the wind it cried, Morocco, Morocco, Morocco. They drove and they flew, and a kindly man said, it's Euclid for you. You can hang up a sign. You can make your Morocco right here. And the wind blew and it called, and Morocco it said, while she greeted the patrons and filled up the glasses, served plates once exotic, and weathered the floor by the poetry window. The wind cried, Morocco, 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 and she followed, and it guided her path for 41 years. These decades later, the wind echoes still, Morocco, Morocco, Morocco on Euclid right here. The final poem is an old poem that I bring out every year in Poetry Month. It's kind of my anthem to poetry, and it's pretty self-explanatory, but it came out of a question that was asked at a poetry reading up in Iowa City a few years ago, and then took on the additional layer of some images that came from a dream, and it was written over a period of a number of months. Part of it was written in the airport in Baltimore. Part of it was written on Interstate 35 driving across Kansas. Can poetry change the world? Someone asked a question of a poet. Can poetry change the world? Poet smiled but had no answer. Boomeranged the question. It bounced from her voice, glanced sideways, lodged in me, and now I ponder. Change the world? Poetry? Maybe, if we believe in possibilities, that multitudes of angels, that sacred dozen thousand, really are capable of frolic or love-making on the head of a single pin. If we believe that poems like prayers come from places deep within, channel energies uncomprehended by intellectual analysis, maybe. if we not only believe, but share the breath and metaphor of images untangled from constraints of grammar, structure, punctuation, perceptions unwound of line and logic? This question followed me into a dream. The dream began to spin a story built on a supposition of possible unfoldings of poetry from pages and plunged its words into the midst of anger, chaos, opportunities for healing. If a soldier makes a poem and gives it to the mother who has lost her child, and if the mother cries her lines and drapes them over the shoulders of the man determined for revenge, and if the avenger writes his rage in words that release the venom so that his soul may heal, and then hurls his poem at his enemy, and if his enemy reads with even a glimmer of understanding, and then pens his own frustration, anger, and maybe even hope. And if the enemy of the avenger passes these musings of his own up the chain of his command, and his words are read by one with power to exercise restraint that saves the life of a child. And if that child, that boy, then writes a poem of gratitude and sorrow, discovers in his life a flash of grace, and if he shares his treasure with a teacher who finds inspiration in the story of the boy carried now by his poem, and if the teacher uses this new energy to empower among her students courage, beauty, confidence, to create and carry stories of their own across the town to other cities and around the world, then poetry may flower, may send the scent of peace, reflect the brilliance of self-respect. Then the words of poetry may take on power in the numbers of their creators to fly, transform, heal, build bridges, make love for a moment in one heart, one place, 2 times, 50 times, 10 million times a day, when we believe that poetry can change the world.
Dwight Bittikoffer and Raven Wolf. We're going to take a 10-minute break now. Drink wine, drink tea, eat chocolate cake, and read the bios, both sides. See you in 10.
I didn't get a chance to say this over break, but I wanted to remind everybody that we do have the newest issue of River Styx here, which is our American Odes issue. If you haven't got a chance to take a look at this, it's one of our best issues that we've done in a long time, and you can avail yourself to this issue right here at the River Styx table with our lovely and talented intern Rachel will hook you up with this. It's a good one. And you also have information about our Big River Writers Conference. I think most of you have this on your table, or you should. If you have any questions, please ask. We're happy to talk about it. And without any further ado, I will give you once more Mary Ruth Donnelly.
Okay, starting the second half. Second half, we have Jen Goldring. She's served on the board for several years now. As a membership chair, she initiated the MailChimp blasts and sent them all out initially. Her photography has appeared on our contest chapbook cover. She's the one that made these wonderful programs that you have at your tables. And she does tons more. Please welcome Jen Goldring.
Hello. I would like to thank River Styx and the St. Louis Poetry Center. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and to be reading for you tonight. Okay, I'm just going to dive in and read. I don't do a whole lot of intro, but when it's needed, I will. Sorry. Fresh cuttings. Naked underneath my robe, I stand at the kitchen sink. Shelves of plants hang in the eastern window. A pothos I've had 15 years mounds in its pot, the heart leaves trail down. Bijou bud vases cast clear and green and cobalt reflections. In them, fresh cuttings want to root. A pot of dragon's tongue wants a drink. A basil plant I refuse to cook with has grown too beautiful. I rub a leaf between fingers, and fragrance fills the room. A leggy stem of wandering Jew reclines in a jar of water. The pothos tip, rooted in 2 days, wants dirt. A sprig of basil remains fickle, tiny rootlet. The wandering Jew, I do not know what it wants. I dreamt of you. We were in San Francisco walking up Lombard Street, your hand twined in mine. We went to your apartment. I waited for you to root in me. I needed your arms to split me open like Hoya roots split soil, twist my limbs into tendrils. Was I not beautiful enough? I fill the copper kettle, light the stove, set it to the flame. I prepare the loose leaf oolong. I search again for roots. We want so many things. When all else failed, I wanted to be avian, to need to fly in order to eat. I wanted to swoop down, dip the lake, and rise, talons full of fish, slippery with life and slippery with death. I'd love the first thing I grasped. I'd land and pin the catch with claws and rip at the soft belly, push the indent of the flailing fish, now gutted, liner red entrails, gray stone of want, yellow bile leaking, and the beautiful cornflower look of the gills. I'd peck those delicately. Wash of lust on my beak, and sated, or perhaps just satisfied, I'd lift again to the sky with the screech, with the pumping of wings and heart and rhythm, with an awareness of even the most subtle wind. I do write a lot about my family, and the next poem is about that. What do I need that I cannot carry in my heart? My 6-year-old daughter tells me she wants to be Buddhist, though she won't be a vegetarian or give up her dollhouse, and she's conflicted about even this. So I tell her Buddhists strive for perfection, but do not attain it. And she asks what it means to strive, and leans over and tells her older brother about suffering and how him wanting things he cannot have is part of life. And just now, I feel the weight of this pen and decide to sell all the things in our house or give them away and let them become someone else's burden. We sit on the family room floor, the dog in my daughter's lap, me holding my boy in my arms and telling him he needs a haircut, and I love him, and my goodness, Jack, you are growing up way too fast. And the next poem that I'm going to read is about home, which is Arizona, and this is forthcoming in Tar River Poetry in the fall. Storm chasing. You can chase storms in a 1981 Volvo station wagon, watch ball lightning form over a field of cotton, and drive faster than the rain to try and catch the spark. All you need is enough gas and maybe a friend who will sit on the swings with you later, talking about life after seeing this blue orb bounce, while he secretly wishes to kiss you. Then you can turn your back to him, let him miss your lips and kiss your cheek. You know he'll chase storms with you no matter what. He wants to love you, but you won't let him. Why would you ever let it come to that when you can race along washed-out Arizona farm roads, windows down, rain screaming in at your face, and your own hot hand on your thigh? Friday morning. She wakes in a warm bed of light. She blinks once, twice, takes delight in the way the sun streams through the slats of the shutters. Shadows cast across her breast and his chest, the outline of legs beneath the sheets, the way the tree outside the window curves like her body. She is a leaf in flight rolling with the wind. She turns, strokes a cheek, an eyelid, his lips. Tangled again with her lover, she asks, why can't a poem just be about sex anymore? She knows he leaves later, goes home to a wife, she to her husband in time to make dinner. She presses her body against the firm cage of his ribs, wraps around him the way the sun wraps around the day. We cannot peel the light off the sidewalk. We just wait for the slanted shades of afternoon, get dressed, break our embrace, and leave the bed unmade. And I have a couple short ones. Waiting for You, with an epigraph by Rutke. Beautiful my desire and the place of my desire. Waiting for you is like watching a peach become ripe on the branch. Each day test the flesh, push the skin to feel the give, fill with the anticipation of the juiciness. To know this waiting that the peach will fill is enough. I grab at it and inhale. The tickle of fuzz on my lip holds me over. It's the promise now, just a whisper of what the flesh will yield. I could not stop thinking. I could not stop thinking, so I listened to French opera, uncorked a bottle of Tikal Malbec, washed the dishes, and left my hands wet. Fed the dog again, and he did not eat, so I sliced apples and ate the slivers with an English cheddar. Stripped naked and looked at my form in the mirror. Took a shower, and the mirror fogged, so I used my finger to trace my figure. Sleep was out of reach. I recited Rutke. I made up stories about you in California. I thought about your wrists, the thick bone and the blue-green veins on the smooth underside. I considered your hands and the last time they touched me. The phone never rang, and I checked the connection. The next one I wrote one day after shoveling my driveway for the third time. And I was really, really sick of winter, like pretty much everybody here probably is. So I'm so thankful for spring, but this was in a moment of shoveling despair. Somewhere there is frostbite. She will lie down here and let the snow cover her. Let the quiet bury her body. The flakes fall fat and fast, and the wind The wind drifts and pushes her hair into her mouth, and it tastes like salt. It freezes against her cheek the way his last kiss did, like a brand burn of lost desire. And she says to no one, how long does it take to freeze a human heart? She thinks of it now like a piece of meat and removes it from her mind as the structure of love. She buries herself to her waist, lies back in a drift, counts her breaths in, out. The empty spaces want to fill. She hears the swish in her head. Wait, the whole world waits for you. She knows it's a lie. No one is waiting. Everything moves. Crystals come in this cold and the pain. It lingers long after she's dug herself out. And I just have two more. The next one is my homage to the Central West End. It's just something I wrote walking home from Duff's, from a poetry reading at Duff's one night. Walking along Euclid in early spring. Tonight the moon sits in the sky, orange and sliced like cantaloupe. A woman stands on tiptoe, head tilted up, her tongue tip on her lip, arms open to that mysterious fruit in the sky. She's trying to take a bite, and though she knows it is beyond her reach, she will always salivate for this juicy moon. The moonlight draws the gnat and the lacewing from the grass. The small gray bats dart above blooming dogwood and feast. And the last poem I'm going to read was actually written just last week, and it's part of a larger series, but I'm just going to read one of the poems from the series. Late Summer, Iris. I am naked when my hair is down. It cascades halfway down my back. Your thumbs press into my sacrum. You pull the brush through my hair and smooth it with your hands. Your fingers play down my spine and scoop around to cup my body. The warmth is too much, and I pull away. Just yesterday, I watched you plant iris bulbs and pull weeds. You came into the kitchen and whispered something I did not hear and did not ask you to repeat. It hurt too much to know how much you love me. I am not so lovable, and we are too quick on this earth. I bury my face in your neck so you don't see the tears. You tilt my chin up to kiss me, my face half hidden. No, 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 you say, it's all true. I shake my head and say, I wonder what color the flowers will be. You touch my nose and smile. You tell me, be patient. We'll find out next summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, for your beautiful poems. Last is Keith Byler. He has served on the board and as board president. He continues to support board activities, hosting our yearly retreats along with his wife Danica, supporting our fundraisers and serving as idea man, and support to board presidents who have come after him. That's me. Welcome, Keith Byler.
I know who that was. Hello. Before I start, I just have to say I got here at 6 o'clock tonight for dinner, and I witnessed two miracles in this room. The first was a young lady bringing these huge speakers and tripods and this thing up a narrow, steep staircase by herself, put them up there. I wanted to jump up and help, but my wife said I should remember my age. Let's give it up for Rachel. What do you say? All right, 12 and a half minutes and you'll be out of here, I promise. So, like most people who write poems, I think that work is probably informed by our other work, and for me that's medicine, so you may hear a bit of that as I go through this tonight. And in that vein, I'm so sorry. I'm going to start with one called The Mortician, and this will be the most grisly one that I read tonight. I promise I'll get more gentle with you after this, but I wrote this one night in the ER when I was thinking about how different professions see through a different window, and how there were things that I see that some people wouldn't, and there's things that the barber hears in the barber chair that the massage therapist hears, and if you're a cop, you see things in a different way than if you're a grocer. And I wrote this just sort of wondering what it would be like to be a mortician. The mortician. He sees the whole naked parade, the king and the pauper, the modest grandmother who all her life undressed in the dark, the angry corporate CEO carrying such shame for the small size of his nubbin of a penis, the debutante who would never think of leaving the house without her makeup every hair in place, with matching purse and shoes, the young, virile captain of the football team, hard-bodied, invincible, the little girl down the street who every day fed the ducks by the lake. He sees them all, neighbors, strangers, contorted, cold, face up, lying on the metal slab in nothing but their creepy, washed-out birthday suits, limbs stiff with rigor, skin with a lacy blue hue, eyes half-open, mouths gaping in a silent scream. Some with limbs cocked sideways, bones poking out from rents and flesh, hair caked with blood, eyes bulging, face ashen gray. Others more fortunate, who fell asleep with a peaceful visage and a slight wry smile, but who all, if they only could, would protest that they don't like being viewed in this ignominious way, with pubic hair exposed, the secret birthmark on the inner thigh revealed, old private scars crisscrossing the protuberant belly, perhaps a catheter still in place attesting to those last debilitated days. He sees them all in their egalitarian poses, and he lovingly puts the arms and legs in their proper places and paints the life back on their faces, and trims and cleans the nails, and dresses their nakedness to ready them for this last social obligation, where just as when they were born, they will be the event of the day. This is called Unfamiliar. When things are not quite as expected, when Pleiades is red-hot orange overhead like a tiny Christmas ornament at the vertex of a black sky, when you run down a dark sidewalk in your bare feet, rain glistening off the cement ahead, distant street lamp illuminating drops falling gently on slant, yet none fall on you. When old friends you haven't seen for years step from behind bushes and garbage cans and parked cars to greet you, but their faces are slightly pinched and they are the size of elves. When suddenly you park your car in a strange driveway that you somehow recognize as your own, and the wipers don't work, and when you get out you note the car is askew, and you lift it by the rear bumper effortlessly with one hand and nudge it into place. until the telephone rings the world reeling back, snapping the face of day over the face of night, bewildered. I actually had that poem, Too Much Ice Cream and Pickles. So this next one is called My Cadaver's Hand. And as freshmen in medical school, we spent, in groups of 4, we spent 6 months with one cadaver. And ours was a little old woman. And I remember being fascinated by her hands in the context of what those hands had done during that long life. And this was the night before an exam, and I was the last one in the anatomy lab, still plucking away, trying to figure it out. And I guess it made an impression on me, because I actually wrote this 25 years after the fact. It's called My Cadaver's Hand. Gross Anatomy, a class title with a double meaning which wasn't lost on any of us. Toiling away, cutting through skin and fat and fascia, olfactory senses mercifully dulling to the mix of mildly decaying flesh, partly obscured by acrid formaldehyde. Peering first at the lab manual, then at the cavernous gaping hole in the chest, trying to distinguish the vast wet maze of nerves and vessels and ribs, sweat stinging eyes that cannot be rubbed. Exhausted, I am the last live body standing tonight in this surreal chamber of past and future desires. Tripping awkwardly over my 2 leaden feet, I bump the metal-wheeled table on which she lies, and then her liver-spotted hand falls from beneath the white sheet. A hand that arrests me in my tracks, small and white and delicate, an old hand that has rocked how many children and grandchildren and rubbed how many tummy aches and soothed how many broken hearts. Was her own heart once broken? I put down my scalpel and forceps and slowly sit on the 4-legged stool and take her hand gently in mine, the hand seeming separate from the mess on the table that used to be her, the hand transporting me back to a time when a gray-haired old woman was an auburn-haired little girl. Jumping rope or drawing great chalk squares on a summer sidewalk, or a nervous 16-year-old descending the stairs in flushed anticipation of her first homecoming dance, or an anxious young mother not sure what else to do but pace, clutching, rocking her colicky first, who surely never imagined that someday she would end up on a metal table in a great room with 26 cadavers, with a gaggle of first-year medical students gathered round, play-acting a confidence yet unearned, trying to learn each vein and tendon of her anatomy. But now alone, I study every line and crevice in her hand, like a palm reader at the county fair, able to imagine only her past, her future no longer in question. I tuck her hand gently under the sheet and return my tired attention to the page, grateful for gifts that disclose from unlikely places and for rare times when death is cheated, if only by returning something back to life. So this next one is just kind of a fun one for me. I have a really good friend in South Texas, and he's lived in the same house for over 40 years on the Arroyo. And his daughter, his only daughter, got married out on the East Coast, but wanted to come back to her hometown and have a reception. And so they had this reception in the house where she had grown up and had all the family. And it was a big deal. I mean, this is sort of my take on it. It's called Sean and Lita's Texas Wedding Reception. Shortly before the guests arrived, the house she grew up in seemed pensive, quiet, slow breathing with its shades drawn, tapping its belly with one finger as it considered each final detail. Promptly at 4, the first guest entered its yawn bearing gifts. The house opened its eyes, took a breath, shook itself alive. As more and more arrived, the walls swelled, bowing outward. The windows hummed and vibrated in their casements. The floor swayed and undulated like a caterpillar. The carpet sizzled and crackled, and sparks shot from each dancing shoe like flint on stone. Mariachis twirled in, 12 of them, and fireworks fell from the cathedral ceiling like meteors. One man's brandy burst into flames, delighting us all. Just when the shingles were about to fly off into the wind and the windows started to melt like sheets of ice, the mariachis bowed their adios and packed it in. The caterers brought in a front-end loader and cleared the tables. One by one, couple by couple, floated away. We slumped giddy, full, exhausted. The house let out a belch that could be heard for miles and then fell silent. This is just a little short one that was sort of a poem that I wrote in a hopeful place about my father's cremation. It's called Returning. When they burned his body in the furnace, specks of him blew up and out the chimney. Hot sparks floating, carried on a zephyr over cornfields and rivers, even as he cooled. The heavier embers drifted to ground first, each in turn according to its size. But the most minuscule one remains aloft, like the hang glider he never learned to fly. Drifting out over the Pacific Ocean, finally landing on the back of a humpback whale, she having risen for air, the speck stuck on the hide by the moist, salty slick, until down she went, this speck of him sliding off somewhere between 12 and 15 fathoms, this speck of him now free-floating in the briny depths, dissolving into everything. And I'm gonna close with a short little narcissistic piece. Offering assistance to anyone who may want to throw a memorial service for me when my time comes. It's called Over the Rainbow. It is entirely unnecessary, mind you, but should you choose to do a memorial service, I'm happy to offer pointers. I'd like all my friends to wear clogs. Clogs have served me well through the years. Comfortable, stylish, in a Volvo sort of way. Easy to slip in and out of, this being crucial for emergencies and a life of fluidity. And at the proper moment, you may wish to appoint a master of ceremonies to handle this. I want all to click their heels together like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz and say in unison, "There's no place like home. There's no place like home." Precisely at that time, Somewhere Over the Rainbow will start to lilt sweetly from the loudspeakers. But I'd prefer that instead of Judy Garland, the singer be that big Hawaiian guy whose modern ukulele incarnation of the song does it so much more justice. Feel free to sing along. I encourage it, in fact, though I realize that some of you may be daubing your eyes at this point. It's okay. Wherever and whatever I am, I'll be dancing. Thank you very much.
Before we bring Richard out to give us a rousing dismissal, I want to thank again Richard and Kim for letting us read this last edition for this year of the River Styx series. I want to thank the poets for their flowers and song, and I want to thank you all for being such a great audience. Thanks.
Well, we have just a few announcements before we go, and
I want to thank you guys for coming and thank the St. Louis Poetry Center and our readers tonight. Everyone who read tonight is very dear to me, so tonight was very special, so thank you. And I did want to say also that it has been exactly a year that a bunch of us gathered here tonight to listen to poetry. It was Patriots Day, just hours after the Boston Marathon bombing. And it was really good to be here that night, and it's really good to be here tonight. Just sharing something that I love with people that I love. Anyway, I watched the race this morning. It was awesome. I tried to work, but it's funny how you can spend hours watching a marathon. You think nothing much is happening, but it's so exciting. And I tend to get emotional at watching marathons. And does anyone else? It's like, think of what these people went through to do what they're doing. Some of these people, like, I cry watching them take off. I do. And I'm like, wow, go, people. So I'll sit, you go. This is our last regular reading of this season. In the summer, the fun goes on, so we do not break, but the summer is Hungry Young Poets, which will be put together and directed by the excellent Kelly Allen. So stay tuned. I don't even know if that is, if everything's booked and out yet, but is it on the website? Are the poets up on the website yet for the summer? So
We just got it.
Okay, so I don't know who they are yet, but stay tuned and keep your feelers out and look for that. It'll be fun. He talked about the issues that we have for sale here. Richard did. Over here we have the American Odes issue, which is awesome, our last themed issue. The one that's coming out is our 39th anniversary issue, the Who Wants to Turn 40 issue, so it's 39th anniversary issue. It's a double issue with a lot of famous poets that you guys will know. Let me give you a few of the names. Ted Kooser, Kim Adenizio is in there, Stephen Dunn, Dorian Laux, Albert Goldbarth, Robert Wrigley, A. Stallings, and more. I have a big list, but I won't go on. So check that out. And I think before I say anything else, you want to talk about the conference.
Oh, yeah. So this conference brochure that you all have, our workshops are pretty much full at this point. It's more popular and successful than we anticipated. We thought we were going to take a huge dive on this, so we're really happy. However, even though the workshops are full, email us if you're interested in doing this, because we have a waiting list, and I think there's one that's still open. But the readings are all free and open to the public, and we like to be neighborly at River Styx. As you all know, we think of ourselves as good neighbors in the literary community, which is why we partner with the Poetry Center as well. But we will be having Dorian Laux, who is huge. I mean, not physically huge, but she's a little bitty, really. But she'll be reading Adrian Matika, who used to be our co-director, my buddy and basketball buddy, our co-director. If he's not huge now, he will be. I mean, he just won the Guggenheim. He was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. He was a finalist for the National Book Award. So he's close to being huge. And then George Singleton, who's also read here, and Kathleen Finneran, they'll all be reading along with Poet Laureate William Trowbridge and Curtis Sittenfeld, the novelist. What was her novel called?
American Wife.
American Wife, right. The George Bush novel, the funny one, that the Bushes hated. So anyway, they'll be reading, and you're welcome to come, and we invite you, please do, because it's a chance to see some great writers and come up close to and meet them as well. So that's my pitch.
Actually, I don't think I had anything else. So do you have anything else?
Thanks for coming all this season.
Thanks for coming. Okay.